Hello and welcome to the Reflective Dialectic Practical Sessions. Knowing that I'm repeating myself, I do appreciate your active participation, especially today in the cold, rain and windy conditions. And an additional welcome to the eSurf community. My name is Philip and I facilitate these practical sessions in support of a reflective analysis dialectic. These practical sessions, for those of you who are interested online, is in support of the academic sessions we've got, or the theoretical sessions we've got as well. So you can look at that. As I mentioned previously, the purpose of this reflective dialectic lectures are to make us more informed and more efficient and safe as communicators in the space of identity, human diversity, and the value of life. In the theoretical sessions up to now, we first looked at the paradigm dialectic, which makes it modernism and postmodernism. And then we looked at the origins of logic, just very quickly, which is more of a ecological and a mental dialectic. So that is as far as the theoretical lectures are going. But for today, for the practical, I actually asked you to look at Carneades.org on YouTube, as well as Simon. But as soon as I started to look at Carneades in more detail, I found that it wasn't a one paragraph thing as I thought. So it took me a while and I decided to split it today. I'm really sorry that you've done all the work, but now you don't have to do any work next time. Okay. So for today, and maybe we'll have a bit of an early day, given that it's so cold outside and so rainy. So I'm going to look at Carneades today and critique it. Where do you find it? You will find it on YouTube for those online, and it was loaded 2023 on the, I've actually forgotten on which platform it was, but you can just type in Carneades.org, what is CRT. Now, to start off today, just for the sake of interest, Carneades was from Libya, and he took over Plato's school of philosophy in Athens, and it was about 200 years BCE. Now I know that some of you have commented last time I'm getting my dates wrong, and I'm quite aware of it. So I'll read it, 200 BCE. So now we know that that's around about approximately it. He had a critical take on knowledge, which kind of got to a stage where knowledge was almost not possible. But as a legacy to him, Carneades.org is an unrelated organization that produces philosophical videos. So they've got their own channel on YouTube for that. You can go and look at it. Right, what do they say about what CRT is and what it does, and how do they critique it? And now, how do I critique them? Now, I've got a few points. The first one is introducing the viewer to CRT. That's the first thing we do. they state that they give us a simple, known description of CRT, and they say the following. It's an investigation into a critique of the systems that promote legal and racial equality in accordance to the civil rights movement, but it stands accused of failing to provide practical equalities of opportunities across all races. So what we're saying is, CRT is saying that the institutions, and please note this is America, the USA, the institutions are racist, are racially corrupt, however you want to put it. So that's the definition, and that's the definition Carneades.org gives back to us. But remember, this definition is for critical race theory, which is postmodernist. And remember what we've said before, if it's postmodernist, there shouldn't be a definition. And we'll get back to that today quite a few times. What's so strange with me about this extraction are the following things. Where equalities of opportunities is qualitatively different from what they actually want, which is equity, which is an equality of outcomes. So what Carneades states here as equalities of opportunities should actually be equalities of outcomes, which is closer to equity and which is a very different animal. Right, their focus is on groups, a group phenomenon. And it's a me group they represent and the you group they revolt against. Remember, the radicals, the revolutionaries. According to our first paradigm structure, the postmodernist one. But can be according to me as well. But, however, the individual exists as an agent, but links to a group. It is therefore conceivable that each individual battles with his race identification to obtain his or her own rights as a person. That means, yes, you're an individual, and you may be part of a group. Actually, you may be part of several groups. Racially, sexually, intellectually, whatever, you may be part of any of those groups. But you're not the group. The group is not fighting your personal battles in your workplace, in your community. They're fighting for a undefined community, or a community kind of defined by broad lines like race or gender or sexual orientation. Yes, I don't hear disability that often, which to me is a very important one, but you seldom hear about it. But we'll get to it at some stage within this program. Right, let's see, where am I? The problem with a collective of a communist is that communism is that it has no place to allocate agency, responsibility, and accountability. Those are individual things. Agency, responsibility, and accountability. You're responsible for, or responsible to, but you are also accountable to someone. Responsible for, accountable to. In their demands and announcements, the quality of a critique is suspect because they do not advance their civil rights structures and promote that. What was already achieved, it just leave it on the table. I'm not working with it. Or actually, we're not leaving it on the table, we're hiding it under the table. So now we're coming up with something completely different because, according to them, the civil rights movement didn't achieve what they wanted to. So instead of being ethically reflective, aesthetic seeking and useful way towards a solution, they chose rejection, rage, revenge, rightmanship, and revolution. Now, what rightmanship means is they just can't be wrong. They just can't be wrong. They have to be right. Now, remember what we've said before? They reject everything in the hope to score more. In other words, they fail to employ a cultist chisel. Remember we had that before. And we'll get it again. So, Carneades gives us some statistics which they got from the CRT people. And they ask the question is, why black people are disproportionately in prison or poor? In prison, they say 38% of the prisoner population are black versus 12% of the total population. So 12% of the USA is seemingly black, but 38% in the jails or the prisons are black. Now, that sounds a good reason. And poor is a tenfold difference between the income of black people within a family structure and the income of white people in a family structure within the US. So that also sounds like a very good reason for racism. Unfortunately, these statistics need to be critically evaluated. Which of the facts given are the result of correlation and causation? That's my first point. What are we talking here? Are we correlating race or people in prison with race discrimination? Or is it really a cause as they put it? The same with the poor people. I need some information on that to be convinced. Secondly, they failed to employ Occidental's hammer. And remember last time I said it was a Greek god or something, and it's actually Thor. And somebody told me that I made a slight mistake, so I'm just correcting it. They failed to employ Occidental's hammer to help them avoid emotion-tainted stereotype and habitual thinking traps. Remember the idea of a hammer that necessarily brings forth projections of nails and nothing else, and therefore revolution is the hammer and the disparities of the nails to be hammered into the institutions. In the US, they should address poverty more directly rather than via race. So I'm coming back to kind of correlations and things like that. Right. Now, Carneades does something which I want you to note. In the way of critiquing, we using philosophy. And through this philosophical logic, they say we're going to do it like this. They say we're going to evaluate CRT as a reaction to liberalism and economic freedoms, a reaction to roles, and an expansion of what is considered a racist. Now, the last one is an assertion of some kind, Right, let's look at liberalism, or as the way Carneades did it. So, in liberalism, CRT is a critical response to philosophical liberalism and two of its tenets. And the two tenets is equality and individualism. Remember, both we've spoken about earlier as well. Now, valuing equality over equity, they feel liberalism is more about equality and not about equity. Thus, liberal idea that everyone should have equal rights and opportunities, regardless of demographic, are insufficient because it cannot remedy past injustices. You may believe that, or you may not. Right, the second tenet, providing rights to individuals, not groups. We've spoken about that. This is my critique, and that's why we are here, to look at each other's critique, not at Carneades' critique. My first critique is that law is not a tax system. You can have what you can call equitable distribution using an aggressive, progressive tax system to redress poverty. So the rich pays for the poor. And it happens in a lot of countries. Not in all Western countries, but in quite a few. And in some countries more than others. So locally, poor people either don't pay or they start at 18%, and rich pay, those who earns quite a lot of money, up to 45%. So there's a big difference. And the rich gives away almost half his salaries to support the poor. You can't do that in everything. It's done in tax, it can be done in a few things, but culture? How do you do it in culture? Right, next. The problem is that if a subculture exists that claim to have no respect for or commitment to the laws of the system, that cultivates just order. Just order. And their preferences turn into social justice. So with just order, as in social justice, is justice here and now, an eye for an eye. And that's what they want. The legal system is too far away, too distant, too logical. I want to see action, and I want to see it now. Right, next, the CRT argument that the system can discriminate indirectly against a specific group. What Carneades refers to here as redlining, where in the USA again, certain communities were prevented from buying houses because there was some red line that says these properties can't be developed for that reason. And indirectly, they used property to get to the races, because it was mainly a Black American area which was redlined and couldn't get the development or the loans for your homes that people normally needs. Now, to me, this is not liberalism. This is actually politicians acting badly. It's not liberal politicians, it could be conservative politicians. So why that's liberalism beats me. Redlining is not a desired liberal outcome. So what we need to do is, instead of blaming the liberals, we should fix that interfered with a legal outcome, with a liberal outcome. So it's not the system, it's not the liberals, it's a politician interfering. So when politicians interfere, bad things happen. Always. That's my view. Next, the CRT group-based solution is exactly the solution intended by conservative self-protectionist politicians. What the CRT people are doing, or the advocates are doing, is they're saying we look at the group. Now, if I remember correctly, the people who introduced separatism in the USA or in South Africa where we had apartheid, that's exactly what they did. They looked at the group, not at the individual. They ignored individuals. So, what is CRT trying to achieve here? Are we trying to achieve another form of separatism, of apartheid? That's your bus, this is my bus. Okay, you can ride in the same bus, but you sit at the back or the front. Is that what they're trying to achieve because you're part of a group? I don't know. Right, next. The CRT group-based solutions. Sorry, that's the one we just had. Next one. Stripping the individual from mental and moral agency in favor of a collective also strips the individual from independent citizen status and degrades him or her to a subject of a group. Authoritarian governments does the same thing. You're not a citizen, you're a subject of a government, of a motherland. What you do for the motherland, or for the guy in charge of the government, the authoritarian. So you get stripped of your citizenship. That's what it actually is. Liberalism brings you citizenship. CRT is a sense here, takes it away. Right, I've got 3 reasons here for people, for black people in jail. What could other possibilities be? In the next item I'm going to give you to critique, you'll see that there's nothing wrong with the people, says Kendi. I'm saying the opposite here, but let's get to that later. Here I'm saying lack of equality before the law due to racial bias in law enforcement. That's the problem. If that's the problem, then fix it. There's a lack of equality. Fix it. Why are there more black people in jail? A lack of equality. Fix it. Poverty because of a lack of accessibility to opportunities because of location. That's not what liberalism wants. So we need to remedy that. If it's not a race problem, it's a location problem. Let's not make it a race problem. Let's remedy a real problem. A local subculture that refuses to recognize Western law and order as valid justice, and they want decolonized justice. What I said earlier, social justice, and it's a form of an eye to an eye. It's kind of immediate, it's on the spot. Right. The second thing Carneades thinks is a critique to look at, a lens to critique CRT with, is John Rawls, who talked about, he was a philosopher of some kind, a veil of ignorance. And he had this funny idea that you put a veil of ignorance over yourself when you make a decision, so you don't know whether you're white or black, and when you make the decision, and when the decision will be equal for white and black. Okay. If the CRT people has got a problem with that, so do I. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Remember, it's a philosopher talking, so look at it through that lens. I will advocate for integrity and fairness. That's what we should look at. And that's things politicians don't do. Integrity and fairness is not in the book. For laws and policies that promote equality, that strongly correlates with fairness. That's what we want. We want to, everything we do must correlate with fairness. And it must be ethical. And this is my next point. The focus on the population as a whole. A single unit. The population is a single unit. White, black, pink, brown, single unit. One reason is that ethical corruption increases with distance as one moves away from the decision-making center in the system. We'll get to that on a later stage as well. But what you see is, you've got a person with good intentions making a decision, and as it moves away from the center, ethical corruption takes place. Right. I cannot outright fault CRT promoters that cry that there's a blindness in inequality, there's a blindness towards pre-existing systemic injustices. And the reason I can't fault them is very easy. The Greek philosophers and Jesus had very good ideas of how the Greeks to get us from delusion to the logical state, so that we can see reality, and Jesus for equality, and everybody have access to their God as a Father. But Greeks and Jesus were blind to the fact of slavery. And the reason for that is what? We've discussed it, I think. It is, where were I? Let me see. Right, they didn't see slavery. It wasn't in the zeitgeist at the time. Slavery was just normal. What did I write here? This was much to do with historic context and the shift in zeitgeist, but acted as a veil of sorts. So they were behind the veil, they couldn't see slavery as bad. Now the next lens Carneades uses is CRT is expanding the idea of racism. And the reasons Carneades give us, as CRT is a belief in racism beyond specific individual acts. Now, this reveals two issues to me. The word belief tells me that we're looking here at the metaphysical system. it's not reality, it's a metaphysical system. As we said before, in postmodernism, created by the mind. And then beyond the specific individual acts comes things like urban legends, where something happens and it's some group of people somewhere doing these things. And we're never sure what's really happening. The next one is CRT takes both historic and systemic racism against the powerless, those out of power or not yet in power, as immoral. So, any racism against the minority people or people out of power is immoral. Keep that in mind, because we're going to get to the opposite right now. So what we're talking about here is redlining, intergenerational transmission of poverty, things like that. It's the rich doing it, to the poor, it's immoral. And then we switch. CRT advocates for systemic racism to be enforced against group in power. This is good racism, is executed in the form of policies such as affirmative action. So affirmative action is good racism because it's executed against the rich in favor of the poor. So morality for them changes in context. They don't have a fixed principle in their mind, which is good for postmodernism, because nothing is real in postmodernism, nothing is defined, everything is subject to something, and you don't have to stick to your principles by the looks of it. But remember, both Marx and Hitler used these principles, and look where that got us. Now, Carneades tells us then that this good racism, bad racism, the system and the individual is actually different types of racism. And they created 7 types, and type 1 to 3 targets individuals, systems and institutions, with or without intent. And the next one is more systems. First 3 individuals, second 3 was systems, and I've got something wrong here, I'll have to go and look at it. And then I've got a 7th one, which is post-structuralism, which is actually the thing I'm referring to all the time. But things can't be defined in postmodernism. So you can go and look at those types of racism if you haven't done it. It's on the same platform. So my conclusion was, race politics have indeed been extended by CRT, as thought so by Carneades. They took the physical objective world of the political moderate liberals, who emphasized structure, method and merit with the individual as emphasis, and law and order and the legal justice system, and they extended it to the imagined world of self-serving social justice of the political radicals. So it was extended. It doesn't say what the quality is. I would say it's a different quality. Remember, the left of a strong, are looking for a strong man. That's why we get Hitler, Marx, Stalin, strong men. I personally have little to critique or to add to the stated objections of Carneades .org offered regarding CRT, because their objections follow a wandering logic structure, but wander about CRT reasoning rather than staying a strong antithesis or wagering a synthesis. So we never get to the dialectic part of it. They just wander around one objection after the other, and I got tired of looking at all of their objections. Maybe one of you looked at the objections, and we'll hear about that later on. However, I may add disproportionate distribution to the general critique of Carneades. And Carneades states this right at the start, that CRT is dumbfounding definitions, dizzying distinctions, and diabolical doctrines. And all I'm doing, as my part of today, is add disproportionate distributions. Thank you for listening to my critical and dialectical analysis. It is now time for a short break, and then we'll come back and I'm going to listen to you, or we're going to listen to each other. Thank you very much.